I'm Rhett.
And I'm Link.
And we're the hosts of the podcast Ear Biscuits. We're just two lifelong friends who've been talking about life for a long time.
From being dads to businessmen to all the random things we experience, nothing is off limits.
And now we're talking to you. We're answering your questions, giving advice that you may or may not want to take, and listening to your hilarious stories.
So leave us a voicemail to be part of the show at
1-888-EARPOD1 on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts.
You know what it is. That's right. It's time to talk money with your money nerd and financial coach. Now, tighten those purse strings and open those ears. It's the Money Talk with Tiff podcast.
Hey everyone, I am so excited because I have Dr. Sev Bryan on the line, and she's here to talk to us about something I've never talked about on the podcast before, and that's rebuilding financially after a late life divorce. So hey, Dr. Sev, how are you?
Hi, I am well. Thanks for having me on.
Yes, thank you for coming and talking about this important topic. So what is a late life divorce? Let's just start there. What does that even mean?
Well, I got divorced in my 50s, and that is usually when people are winding down to get ready to retire. And because I got divorced in my 50s, I had to do some extra stuff to rebuild my finances. So for me, I define late life divorce as anything after 45, any divorce after 45 years old.
And yeah, I can see how that can be completely different than like when I experienced my divorce, because I'm still, in my 30s. I still got plenty of time before retirement. So let's just get right into this. So first and foremost, I think I want to ask, what was the biggest lesson you learned in going through this process?
Wow. I think embracing the journey, realizing that it is okay to grieve. Because a divorce is like losing someone. You're losing a spouse. You're losing a relationship. And it's similar to death because you've lost that loved one, right? So you have to have a period of grief. And then you have to look at how you can embrace the entire journey, the emotional journey, the financial rebuilding journey, whatever that looks like for you. I think embracing it, the ups and downs will be beneficial for you, because then you can look into how can I now pivot. If you stay in the grieving stage, it may be a little bit harder for you to pivot. But once you realize that I have lost something, I need to grieve this thing. And then what do I need to do with where I am and how can I go forward? I think that will be beneficial for anyone.
Yeah, and I completely agree. I tell people all the time about feeling their feelings or feeling what happened and taking that in and ingesting it, but don't stay there because then you'll become paralyzed, like you said.
Yeah, and there's so much self-discovery that happened, at least for me. It did. There's so much self-discovery and realizing that there are some things that I need to work on as a person. And that during that period, gosh, there was a lot of hurt. there was so much hurt in how did this happen, especially when my finances got a little bit decimated. I'm like, I have always been a giver. I have saved. I have done all the things, quote unquote, that I needed to do. I have been a tither at my church. And I'm like, how could this happen? How could my finances get here? But with those questions, came a period of self-discovery where I really had to dig deep to see how did I contribute to where I am, and how can I, moving forward, how can I do better, and how can I put some things in place that will help me, will get me into a better place, so to speak. So at the beginning, I thought this was a loss. But now looking back, I can see that it was a period where I could not only heal and discover some hidden strengths, but I could now help other people who are in similar situations.
Gotcha. And speaking of helping people in this type of situation, I was just going to ask you, what are 3 tips if someone was out there dealing with a late life divorce right now, to deal with it financially?
One of the first things I would say is face your debt head on. I know it's scary. Because now you don't have 2 incomes, and you may have some additional debt from divorce. Now you may have to rent a place or buy a new place. Like for me, I walked away from my house because he wouldn't leave, and I had to take him back to court. So I went and rented somewhere. So that messed up my credit, and some other things. But to face your debt, whatever the financial part is, face that and get some help as quickly as you can. The other thing I would say is invest in yourself. What are some things that you need to do? Maybe you need to go to therapy. Maybe you need to upskill. Maybe you need to upskill. And maybe you need to speak with a coach about rebuilding your confidence, whatever that is. So invest in yourself. And then the third I would say is, more than anything, learn from the setbacks. What are some lessons? Think about how you can learn from it. So face any financial fallout, invest in yourself, whatever that means for you, and then really try to find some lesson that you can learn from this.
Yes, I completely agree with that. I know when I got separated back in 2021, one of the first things that I did was go to therapy, start going to therapy to start unpacking and digesting everything that just happened. Yes. And I'm glad that I made that investment, because later on, like a few months later, my grandma passed away. And that was like my mom, that's who raised me for a lot of my life. And so I'm like, dang, but since I was already getting the tools and resources I needed from the therapist, it kind of made that transition a little easier as well. And so I completely agree with the invest in yourself, because I feel like when you're in marriages or sometimes in relationships, you get so invested into that person that you stop or slow down investing in yourself. And so that is just a gem right there.
Yeah, because you're busy building the relationship, and especially if kids are involved, especially as women, we tend to put everyone ahead of ourselves, and you're busy building the relationship, make sure the kids are where they need to go on time, and you are last on the list. So this is a time really for you to put yourself first. They have a saying, put your mask on first, and then you're able to help others. And I think if you're going through a late life divorce, this is really where you need to put your mask on first, because then you can help other people, whether it's your kids, your family members, the community. You're healthier after putting your mask on first, whatever that looks like. And therapy maybe just be one of it, because I know it was very helpful for me.
Absolutely. And then financially speaking, you mentioned taking a look at your debt. How do you suggest someone does it? Like, let's say, for instance, in their relationship, they wasn't the one that handled the money. Where do you think that they go from there?
Wow, you really need to, I would say, look around and see how you can get help. It doesn't have to be paid. It can be a community workshop. It can be a program through programs like the United Way or Operation Hope. There's so many other ways that you can find systems and programs that will help you understand your finances. Because if you're going through a divorce, you may not have the money, depending on where you are, professionally, where you are financially, you may not have the money. So look around to see what programs are available. Because I know right now I'm offering 2 free programs at my library. A library is a great resource for programs that are offered on a daily basis. So look around at where you can find some resources. And one of the things that people don't like talking about is budget. We give it all kinds of names, but a budget is a budget, whatever the name is. And it really is being very cognizant of what's coming in and what's going out. However that works for you. There's no strict way to budget, because we're all all handle our finances differently. Personal finance is personal for a reason. And whatever way you can manage to look at what's coming in, what's going out, and how can I really manage the inflows and the outflows. Look at expenses that I may think it's unnecessary and you don't, and that's okay. What do you deem unnecessary? I'm not going to list what are unnecessary expenses because it may be different for you. So look at expenses that you deem unnecessary. What are some things that you can do without? And negotiate with your creditors. If you are in a place where maybe you were left with the debt on the credit cards, talk to your creditors and see what they can do, because they're not in the business of selling assets. They're not in the business of taking back the house to sell or the car or whatever. So how can you negotiate with them? Maybe they can put the payments on the back end of the loan, or they can lower the interest rate, or, how can they work with you? Talk with them. And the last thing I would say is look at debt management companies, not debt settlement, but debt management. There's a difference. Look at those and see how they can maybe help you to arrange your debt in a way that is manageable and may result in you being able to still pay, but in a way that is comfortable for you.
Yes, I love that. There's so many different resources out there. And I think one of the biggest things that it's that shame factor, like, getting over being shameful about what happened in the situation. And especially I can see in like a late life divorce, how that could be even more, how that can feel. And so, there's a ton of resources and a ton of people out here willing to help. It's just speaking up and saying that you need help. I remember when I used to work at a financial firm, we had a client and her husband passed away, and she had to be probably about 67. No, she was about 70, about 70. Anyway, she didn't even know how to pay the mortgage. She didn't know how to do anything because he handled everything. And going back to your point about grieving and the loss of someone, it's the same type of situation. It's like, okay, if this person is the person that did everything, like, what do I do now? And the help is out there. So I'm glad that you mentioned that, Dr. Sev, because people, like to take the ostrich approach or struggle in silence, and don't realize that all they have to do is say one thing to the right person, and all of that stress could be relieved.
Yeah. And you talk about struggling in silence and the shame. There is no one on this earth who has not made money mistakes. No one. And I don't understand why society puts so much pressure on people to be perfect financially. I wasn't born knowing how to handle money. I had to learn that. And I would encourage anyone who's going through divorce, whether it's a late life divorce or anything, a job loss or anything where you have to rebuild or you have to look at your finances a different way, please don't be ashamed, because there are hundreds of thousands of people in the same situation. So I don't want you to be afraid or ashamed. I want you to seek the help that you need, because the earlier you do that, the better you're going to be able to rebuild, or the quicker you're going to be able to rebuild. And for those who may not have handled finances before, just think about your life from a child. Everything you did, you learned how to do it. You learned to ride a bike. You learned to cook, you learn to clean house, you learn to drive a car. So it's learning about money is the same way. Approach it in the same way. You were excited to get on that bike, right? When you got that bike for Christmas, you were excited to get on that bike and learn how to ride the bike. You might not be excited about learning about managing money, but think of the things that you can do once you have overcome the fear of managing money. And one of the things that shame does is it keeps us bound, because we don't open up once we feel ashamed and feel like we're alone. We don't open up. And because of that, we stay bound in our shame. And especially if you are an older, 50s or 60s, going through a divorce, you've already formed your community. And the people in that community, some of them may be going on trips, they may be doing, all the fancy things because their kids are grown or whatever. And then here you are having to start over, and you may feel ashamed. But I would really, really strongly encourage you not to feel ashamed. Or if you do feel ashamed, it's okay, because your feelings are your feelings. But look at how you can turn that into something more productive for you in the long run. And I don't want to keep droning on because there are so many points I could make about this, especially, when you're in a community where people may have a lot of money and you're doing certain things, and you may have to say, no, you can't do that anymore. And that's okay. That's okay to say no. So again, I have a strong affinity for people in this type of situation, because I've been there and I know what it feels like to be on the other side of the journey.
Yes, yes. And with that being said, if people were listening today and they're like, you know what, Dr. Sev, you are talking to me, I'm going through this right now, how could people find you?
I am very active on LinkedIn, and they can find me, Severine, Dr. Severine Bryan, Severine, Bryan, accredited financial counselor. That's a long title. But if they look for Dr. with a dot, Severine Bryan, they should be able to find me on LinkedIn, and they can follow me there. My website, where everything else is linked to, my podcast, my LinkedIn, everything, is sevtalksmoney.com. That's sevtalksmoney.com. And I would love to have a conversation with anyone who's going through this. DM me. I have programs, I have things going on that I think will be beneficial, because this is the population that I mainly serve, is women who have gone through a late life divorce, or they've lost their job and they're in the process of rebuilding in their 40s, 50s, and 60s.
I absolutely love that. And thank you so much for providing that service, because it's so needed. There's so much space out here for everybody, because people are dealing with all types of things. And that's one that, you will definitely be relatable, and that's what people need. So thank you so much, Dr. Sev, for coming on the podcast today. And if you didn't catch all that information, I'll make sure I have it in the show notes. So check that out. It was a pleasure. And I am just like, people need to go ahead and open up and talk to you.
I am so excited about this service that I provide, because I know that it works, because it worked for me.
All right. Bye.
Thank you for listening, joining, and being a part of the Money Talk with Tiff podcast this week. You can check Tiff out every Thursday for a new Money Talk podcast. But if you just can't wait until next week, you can listen to previous podcast episodes at moneytalkwitht.com, or follow Tiff on all social media platforms at Money Talk with T. Until next time, spend wise by spending less than you make. A word to the money wise is always sufficient.